In 1982, the Israelis invaded Lebanon. They bombed the capital city of Beirut. Now, Beirut, being the capital of a place like Lebanon, had a lot of foreigners staying in hotels at the time. And at this one particular hotel, there were 3 Americans who were friends of one another. And when the bombs started to fall and debris and all the chaos that comes with the bombing, the 3 men were on their way down the stairs to try to get to safety. And as they were doing that, suddenly the marble floor started to crack open beneath them. Of course, it scared them very, very, very much. They didn't know what to do. One of them was a Catholic who had just come over to full communion in a Catholic church, and the 2 others were Protestants. Somehow or another, instinctively, the newly converted Catholics started to pray and started to pray out loud, and that kind of surprised him and his 2 fellows that were with him. And what surprised them even more was the prayer that he started to say. You guessed it, he said the Hail Mary. Now, we Catholics who are cradle Catholics are kind of ingrained with this special honor and devotion towards Mary. But this was somebody who had come over from another Protestant religion. And he still felt that same attraction to Mary, that when it was a time of problems, a time in which he was scared and needed help, he instinctively, just like a cradle Catholic, went to Mary and prayed that Hail Mary. This is an example of the church from its very beginning. They always looked to Mary for help. They did it in the early church. They do it today. And when we see the state of the world around us, boy, do we need Mary's help more than ever. Now, today we celebrate the great solemnity of the Immaculate Conception. And I often tell about one of my former parishioners who's passed on to her reward, Bootsy Lanigan. And Bootsy used to always claim that people didn't understand what the Immaculate Conception was all about. They thought it had to do with the virgin birth, in other words, the birth of Jesus, and has nothing to do with the birth of Jesus directly. What it has to do with a special grace that God gave to Mary in response to her fiat, her let it be done to me, doing God's will, and being willing to be the Theotokos, the mother of God. So God wanted to give her a special grace by being someone, one of only 2 people who were not scarred by the stain of original sin. The other, of course, was her divine Son, Jesus Christ. But Mary was conceived without original sin as a special grace to be a fitting vessel, a fitting tabernacle, if you will, for the Son of God to be his mother. And that's what this feast is all about. And of course, with every Marian feast, the attention is not really on Mary, but it's always on God, because that's where Mary's attention was. And we hear that in today's gospel, in that Magnificat, her great hymn of praise to God, thanking him because she was so highly favored by God, that she was full of grace because of what God did, not because of anything she did. And that's a great example for us. Now, we all were conceived with the scars of original sin, but most of us Catholics were baptized as babies, and we received the grace of the sacrament of baptism, in which original sin was taken away. God gave us that grace not because of anything that we did to deserve it, but he gave us the grace of baptism. He gave Mary the grace of the Immaculate Conception, not because of anything she did, but because of his great favor to her. So this is good news for all of us today. This Feast of Mary, if we find ourselves in some state of crisis, we need to make sure that we go to our mother, just like that fellow did in 1982 during the Beirut bombing. We need to pray to her, to ask for her intercession, to honor her, to ask for her help. Jesus, her son, can deny his mother nothing. And you all know that from the story of the wedding feast of Cana. Jesus had no intention of performing a miracle there, but his mother asked him, and that was enough. And we need to go to Mary too for our country, not only because of the problems in our country, but the fact that Mary is the patroness of our country. Our country is dedicated, consecrated to Mary. And we need to remember that. And no better way to show our honor to Mary is than to ask her for her help, to continue to protect our country, our families, and ourselves. And to ask her to guide our country so that we live in conformance with God's will for us, that we as a country can say yes, just like Mary did, to whatever God wants us to do.